This Harley Benton guitar came in for a neck replacement. As it always seems to go with guitar work, things didn't go as smoothly as you'd expect. I tried to get the new neck into the pocket, and it wouldn't seat all the way. You can see how obvious the gap is, and it isn't due to too tight of a fit. The problem is that the neck heel is too thin, and the fingerboard extension is hitting the pickguard before the neck heel can seat fully into the pocket. That's where the gap is coming from. I'll cut a few shims out of wood veneer and put them into the neck pocket, then mount the neck back onto the body using a custom clamp that my friend and guitar tech mentor Steve Kubecka invented decades ago. It's a 2.5-inch C-clamp with a flat bar of 1/8-inch mild steel TIG welded to the non-adjustable jaw of the clamp. It's not only compact, elegant, and easy to use, but it also functions as a stand for the guitar and is narrow enough that you can put the 2 outside E strings on with no difficulty at all. And putting an E string on is going to be critical here, as I need to check where the action is once the neck is shimmed up enough for the fingerboard extension to clear the pickguard. The shim thickness needed to clear the pickguard ended up being a shocking 0.080 of an inch, and that brings its own problems with it. Now the neck is sitting flush in the pocket on top of the shims, but the low E string tuned to pitch is flat against the frets. And that's with the saddle height adjustment screws nearly maxed out. But even if they weren't maxed out, I don't want to be raising the pickups to a ridiculous height just to get them the proper distance away from the strings. So we've got some real issues here. If I use thinner shims, the action should be reasonable, but then the neck won't seat in the pocket. If I use thicker shims, the neck will sit flat in the pocket, but then the action will be too low. I could route the pickguard away where the fingerboard extension is, but it's a virtual guarantee that it'll come out looking terrible. So that's not going to be an option in this case. The solution I'm selecting for this guitar is to use a combination of thinner shims and routing down the underside of the fingerboard extension. And I do mean routing. I'll be using the StewMac plunge router base, a Dremel 4300, and my favorite router bit of all time, bar none. The Amana Tool 47223S 1/4-inch guide bearing, 1/4-inch diameter cutter, 1/8-inch shank router bit. I've already used this bit in a bunch of other videos that I've provided links to in the description box. I'll clamp the new neck face down onto a neck rest caul using a C-clamp and a clamping caul from my fret press. Having a good neck rest caul with clamping holes is essential for any guitar shop, and this is a perfect example of why. Then I'll set the plunge router base down on the heel of the neck with the cutter down towards the underside of the fingerboard extension. I'll very carefully set the height so the cutter is extending just a little bit past the extension. I don't want to take off too much, and remember, you can always take off more. Trust me, it's a lot harder to put material back on than it is to route it off. The guide bearing will press safely against the heel of the neck, while the cutter will only cut the underside of the fingerboard extension. It's important to use a very steady grip and to work in the smallest passes possible, removing very little amounts of material at a time. The bit won't catch or grab as long as you give it small enough workloads that it can handle with ease. Make sure to keep the plunge router base flat against the heel as well. That router bit only needs to tip forward a tiny bit to create a huge problem, so be careful. Fortunately, there's plenty of surface area for the base to rest on, so this is completely manageable with a modest amount of caution. I'll touch everything up with a hand file after routing for the cleanest look and fit possible. And it's a success. I ended up being able to get the neck flat in the pocket with a single shim instead of 3 shims, the action right where it's supposed to be, and a perfect amount of clearance over the pickguard. There might have been a way to measure everything precisely, but sometimes I like to rely on my experience and intuition. And in this case, it worked out beautifully. You might be surprised when you find out that your body knows and remembers more than you think it does. It's worth mentioning that there was a final step before mounting the neck. I only needed a single shim, but it was still almost 30 thousandths thick, and I had to prepare it for installation. That meant drilling clearance holes in the shim for the neck screws. I cut out a piece of tracing paper to match the shim, then I laid it on top of the neck pocket and traced the neck pocket holes onto the tracing paper. Then I laid the tracing paper on top of the shim and traced over it to transfer the marks to the shim. They were very faint, so I darkened the marks after transferring for better visibility. I used water-thin superglue to saturate the shim afterwards. Wood hardener might also work. Wood veneers can be extremely brittle and tend to split, crack, and chip, so it's important not to skip this step. Otherwise, you risk wasting all that work you just did. I took the hardened and dried shim over to the drill press and used a 3/8 inch Forstner bit to drill holes into the shim right over those pencil marks. And then it was ready to install. I slid the shim into place, making sure that all the holes were lining up correctly, with plenty of clearance for the neck screws. Thin double-stick tape can be used to ensure the shim doesn't move. Then I clamped the neck into the pocket, and it was business as usual for installing a new neck. Check the description box for a link to my main video on installing bolt-on necks for more details. I go over the entire process in depth in that video, and it would be redundant to go over it here. I've also linked to my video on clearing the neck pocket holes, and my video on how to install threaded stainless steel inserts on a bolt-on neck. And now's a perfect time to mention one more video I've linked to in the description box. My videos on flattening and deepening a neck pocket when necessary. Think of that as the opposite challenge that presented itself in this video. Here, the neck heel was too thin, and the pocket needed to be shimmed and the fingerboard extension trimmed down. In other cases, such as the videos I just mentioned, the neck heel might be too thick, and to compensate for that, the neck pocket might need to be deepened. That's no easy task, but I've come up with a very safe and reliable method that you can see in great close-up detail in that video linked in the description box. So just be aware that when you go to mount a neck, you're lucky if everything goes according to plan right off the bat. More often than not, bolt-on neck guitars are going to need to be either shimmed or have their pockets deepened to accommodate a new neck. The shim might need to go at the bottom of the pocket to lower the action, or at the top of the pocket to raise the action. And sometimes you also have to open up the sides of the neck pocket to make room for a neck heel that's too wide, or shim the sides of the pocket to hold the not wide enough neck heel in place. Shimming only one side of the pocket may also be necessary for proper string alignment in some stubborn cases. As it is with any other kind of mechanical job in the world, it's really easy and straightforward, until it's not. But with my growing collection of guitar tech videos showing you all of my tips and tricks, you'll be well equipped to deal with any neck mounting challenge that comes your way. All that being said, doing a full setup after successfully installing a neck is imperative, and there are a lot of right and a lot of wrong ways to go about it. Doing a perfect setup will also allow you to accurately evaluate whether the frets need to be leveled or not, and my preferred method for that is the Rectify Master Katana, in addition to some proprietary fret profiling methods of my own. So keep an eye out for new additions to my guitar setup and fretwork playlists. I've always got something new in progress. Hit that like button if you found this video helpful, as it greatly helps to support my channel and keeps me motivated to continue making new videos. And also remember to stay tuned for more unique and challenging guitar tech scenarios you're not going to see anywhere else. And certainly not at this level of close-up detail. Right here on Guitar MD.
Thank you.